We're going to have a series of questions. I'm going to start, and then we'll go back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, as you know. First of all, I want to thank you for the report. As the expert agency charged with overseeing competition, as you mentioned, in the drug marketplace, the FTC's conclusions on how much exclusivity is needed to sustain innovation, I think, is crucial to any resolution of many of the questions that have been raised on this issue. And I have to be honest to say that, I, of course, hear mostly from people who have a financial stake in this. And I think it's essential that we have an objective assessment with regard to exclusivity, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's really crucial that you're here today and that this report came out. Now, members of the biotech industry argue that their patents are not as strong as those on traditional drugs and are not as strong enough to protect them from competition from follow-on biologics. If I understand you correctly, the FTC has reviewed all of the evidence provided by the industry as well as relevant patent law and has concluded that the industry's claim is unsupported by the evidence. And this is an extremely important point because members of the biotech industry have premised their argument for a 12 to 14-year exclusivity period on the claim that their patents cannot fulfill the role they're supposed to. And it's important, this is important enough that I want to be sure I understand your conclusions and that there's, no doubt about them. So let me ask three questions. First, are patents on biotech drugs too narrow or too weak to protect them from competition from follow-on biologics? And Mr. Robleski obviously can answer as well.
Yes, Mr. Robleski is the expert here, but I would say that our research has shown that the patents are strong in this area. In fact, as we look at the sector, the biotech sector, they have been very strong. The stocks in that area actually has been very strong. In the general sector, stock prices have gone down 30%, but in the biotech sector, they've only gone down 15%. So we have not seen as much erosion in that area, and I do believe that the patents are strong in that area.
All right, well, maybe I'll just go to the second question. My second question is, will biotech patents provide less protection from follow-on biologics than the protection against generic competition offered by patents on traditional drugs?
The patent questions were really...
Maybe put that mic closer, you'll be all right.
The patent questions are really central to this entire debate. And what we did was we examined, you can currently, there is branded competition between competitors. And so what we did is we looked at all of those cases in which the industry gave us and the ones that we found on our, all the cases that are out there doing our own research. And we broke them into two groups. The first group was the patents have been very strong, both the drug molecule patents and the process patents have been very strong to keep other branded competitors off the market. When we looked at those cases in which the branded competitor or the pioneer had lost, it was really, the cases really turned on a factual determination that was central to that patent or how those claims were drafted. It wasn't because the law prohibited them to draft their claims in a broader way. And there's there are PTO's written description guidelines that say this is how you can, the legal requirements to get a broad patent to protect against those types of claims that FOBs are likely to make. The written guidelines allow that the claims to be drafted broadly enough to protect against those types of patents. The one last thing we did is there was a great study that came out about a year ago that surveyed all of the patent cases in terms of, has the law changed so that it's very difficult to get a broad scope on your patent to kind of guard against the potential threat of an FOB, and it found that the law had not changed and that the patent holders have the ability to provide, to draft their claims, to draft their patents, to provide a potent shield against FOB competitors.
All right, let me just ask my third question quickly. Is there any defect in the protection offered by biotech drug patents that justifies a longer exclusivity period than the period available to traditional drugs.
Go ahead, take that one.
We found that there are no defects. There's an argument that there may be drugs that have been discovered but somehow are unpatentable because they're not novel any longer. And the requirement to get a patent is that the drug has to be novel. If that's the case, and we haven't seen any evidence that that's the case, then an exclusivity period, similar to the way Hatch-Waxman had a 5-year exclusivity period for a new chemical entity that didn't have patent protection. Hatch-Waxman also gives 3 years for a new indication because that indication couldn't get patent. It seems if there is something new that is being delivered that the patents won't incentivize, then it may be very appropriate to have an exclusivity period to encourage the companies to engage in the expensive R&D to test those drugs.
Such as in the drugs for children population and the diseases that affect very small populations. That would be an example where one would offer an exclusivity period.
But not otherwise.
Unless there was an unpatentable drug, as Mr. Robleski indicated.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Deal?
First of all, let me make sure that I understand, since there's been criticism about the scope of this hearing today, what I understand you to say is that your study and your testimony today is to deal with this question of competition and how it will evolve in a follow-on biologic marketplace. And questions like safety, interchangeability, those are issues that best address themselves to the Food and Drug Administration and not to you. Am I correct?
That's precisely correct.
I didn't want you to be criticized for something you were not undertaking to do here today.
Right.
And I think that's important because we all are concerned about safety. We're all concerned about the things that are within the province of the FDA. But let me focus in on what you have testified to and what your report identifies. Most of us have heard from the lobbying community about how long should the period of exclusivity be. Now, what I hear and what I see in at least the summary that I have read of your report is that you don't even feel that there is even a need for any exclusivity period, and specifically, I think your statement says the drug has already been incentivized through patent protections and market-based pricing. So you're saying that there are two protections that the pioneer drugs enjoy that is somewhat different from the chemical-based arena in these areas. One being that patents are strong enough, and let me ask you specifically about that. As I understand you to say, the reason you think patents are stronger than we might be led to believe is that in this arena, there are more and varied patents in the follow-on biologic arena than in the chemical arena, specifically including patents on manufacturing and the technology platforms on which they're based. Is that correct?
That is correct, and there's another component, too, that competition resembles brand-to-brand competition. And in brand-to-brand competition, the patents protect the innovation. In the follow-on context, you have the method of treatment patents, you have the process by the product by process patents, the manufacturing process, including the cell lines. So yes, the report concludes that patents have been shown to be strong in this area.
And the second component that gives protection that is more unique to this follow-on arena than chemicals is what you refer to as market-based pricing. And I think you've already told us that you do not expect the drastic reduction in pricing to occur on the pioneer product just because a follow-on comes onto the market.
That's right.
And that is an additional protection that the pioneer enjoys in this arena that they do not necessarily enjoy in the chemical arena.
And the characteristics of this market is a follow-on. There would only be 2 to 3 follow-ons that would enter the market. And those follow-ons would only take 10 to 30% of the market share away. So the branded pioneer manufacturer would still enjoy 70% of its market share. And so there would be enough incentive and competition and pricing to satisfy the entrants. And contrasted with the generic market, where after the first generic comes in, taking 25% of the branded firm, then you would have 8 to 10 generics come in, and then they would all cannibalize that 80%. So it's a very different competitive, situation with the follow-on.
Plus, also, am I correct that the follow-on biologic will take a longer period of time for approval, even with the exclusivity period even non-existent? That would still take longer to get a follow-on on the market than a traditional chemical-based generic would take.
I'm not sure about that. I'm going to turn to Mr. Wroblewski. I think not, but I will let Mr. Wroblewski answer that.
The time to bring a follow-on to the market would take longer than it would the time that it take a generic.
It's check the mic and closer to the mic too, Mr. Wroblewski.
The time to bring a follow-on to the market would be the evidence showed that it'd be about 8 to 10 years. The time it takes to bring a generic drug to the market is 3 to 5 years. And the one thing about market-based pricing, the point that we were, to complement what Commissioner Harbour just talked about, was that when you have a patent, that allows you to charge, and you're the only one on the market and you've developed an innovation, that allows you to charge a price, any price, a monopoly price. So if the period of time in which you enjoy that monopoly is shortened, the ability to raise the price, that's what market-based pricing is all about, to make up for that.
Mr. Deal, I misunderstood what you had said. I had thought you meant FDA approval, whether that would take longer, and my answer was no, it would not. But as Mr. Wroblewski said, yes, FOB drugs would take about 8 to 10 years to develop, and they would likely cost between $100 to $250 million, as compared to small molecule generic drugs, which would take 3 to 5 years to develop and would cost roughly between $1 to $5 million.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deal. Chairman Waxman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Could you just repeat that last point? For biologic drugs, it takes 8 to 10 years?
Yes. Biologic drugs would take 8 to 10 years. Follow-on biologic drugs would take 8 to 10 years to develop, and it would likely cost between $100 to $250 million, contrasted with the small molecule generic drugs, where product development would take approximately 3 to 5 years to develop and would cost between $1 and $5 million.
Okay, thanks. So it costs more money.
Yes.
And it takes more time to develop these biologic drugs. And therefore, they want to know they're going to have their full protection. Mr. Wroblewski,
I just want to make sure that we're talking about the follow-on and not the pioneer.
Oh, I see. You're talking about the follow-on.
You know, I just want to make sure.
So if you've got a new biologic drug, you've got a patent and you think the patents are good, that's enough protection. We could give an exclusivity for that period of time. Patents, by the way, are for 20 years. Isn't that right?
Correct.
When we did the Hatch-Waxman Act, the patents were 17 years. We moved the patent period all the way to 20 now. And when the Hatch-Waxman Act was a trade-off, we said that we would allow generics to be approved through an abbreviated process in exchange for giving the brand name company additional time lost at FDA for the approval time. And that's called the patent term restoration. Well, we didn't know about biologic drugs in the mid-1980s, but these drugs get that patent term restoration, don't they? Yes, they do. So they now have a longer patent time, and they get the restoration period for the time spent at FDA. Your conclusion is pretty surprising, because what you're saying is that if somebody says they need 12 to 14 years of exclusivity, you don't think they need it, because patents and they have market-based pricing available under the current law, which you believe provides sufficient incentives for innovation.
It's not only that we believe it, it's what the industry has said for years, that patents have been so essential to their development.
Now, you're also concluded, and Mr. Deal pointed to this, so let's say we say at some period of time there's going to be an approval process for a generic follow-on, and that may take 8 to 10 years, so that's a long period of time once they even start to get the generic follow-on to come into competition. But once it's approved, it's not the same as a small molecule drug where people know it's the exact same drug and it can be substituted. A generic follow-on drug, which is going to take longer to finally get on the market, and they can't even be considered until the patent period is up or the exclusivity period is up, won't be substitutable. It's going to be like another brand name drug competing with a different brand name drug. What will that mean in terms of the loss of market for to the generic competitor?
You know, when one of the aspects of branded drug competition is the substantial first mover advantage that the pioneer has. And so what's going to have to happen is when that follow-on comes on, it's going to have to develop its own marketing and sales force to show that its product is actually more safe or more effective or somehow improves safety, convenience, efficacy for treatment of that drug to gain any market share. And that's actually a huge benefit for competition. Competition brings not only price competition, but it also brings improvements to the products, which are very, very important. So you have to look at both of them.
But the competition doesn't start immediately to drop that price because they have to convince the doctors and others that this is a follow-on that can serve the same purpose as the original drug.
That's correct. And when we've looked at market experience in Europe, in which they have a biosimilar pathway, in the two markets that we've looked at, there are two drug markets. Both of them, after 3 to 4 years, where the biosimilars have already been on the market, only have about a 15% combined market total. So that means the pioneers still retain 85% of the market share, which is totally different from the generic drug model.
And will follow-ons provide going to make high-priced biotech drugs more affordable, and will these follow-ons provide other benefits to consumers?
I think that the original or the evidence that we've seen shows that they'll come in at a 10 to 30% discount, and a 10 to 30% discount on a drug that for a course of treatment annually is $50,000 is a substantial savings, and it will then prompt the pioneer to then move forward to further refine and develop and improve its drugs, which benefit consumers.
So having an end point and then having competition, even if it's not as strong as generics are for small molecule drugs, does spur innovation.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Myrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. This is just a kind of a regional question relative to North Carolina. Biotech sector, you know, is very important in North Carolina and in how it plays into our economy. We see a total employment impact of over 200,000 jobs because of our rich biotech sector. No doubt a well-designed FOB's pathway could also generate additional economic growth. If a pathway were designed as the FTC describes, do you foresee any negative economic impact when it comes to profitability of innovative biotech companies?
I don't believe that the report identifies any, and as I had said earlier, the biotech sector is doing better than a lot of other sectors in today's economy, looking at our stock indices.
Right, I heard you say that. So you just don't think that there's any problem. The other thing I wanted to ask was about the European Union. You know, their system's different than ours is, and when you look at the policies that we have and they have, do you think that their policies generally translate to the United States because we have such a glut of biotech companies here and, you know, our existing patent system, the way it's set up?
the two things that we looked at in terms of the European market. They do things a little bit differently in terms of their patent coverage, and they do things differently in determining at the European level. They decide what is safe and effective for a biosimilar, and they're leaving to the states, the member states of the countries, to decide what would be interchangeable. That is a slightly different structure than we have here in the United States. But the commercial aspects in terms of what these large multinational companies are doing can provide some insight, in Europe, can provide some insights into what they're likely to do here in the U.S.
One more question. When you talk about the delay in the time it takes for the price differential between the FOBs and the innovative biologics, to become significant, because the point of entry for these products is different than traditional generic drugs, the study says that, the price differential would be 10 to 30% of the original therapy's price. Do you think that would put pressure on the insurers and large companies, would put pressure on providers to make the time period shorter?
To make the time period shorter?
Yeah, of bringing them to market. You don't think there's a possibility that can even happen from what you said?
Right.
Basically. I think that's all at this point, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me mention to everyone that we will have 2 votes. One's already been called, but I'd like to get at least 2 more of our members to ask questions before we go. So next is the gentlewoman from Wisconsin, Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you. Commissioner, the FTC report claims that the development time for small molecule and biological drugs are roughly equivalent. And I'd like to highlight the example of Flugen, which is a company that I talked about during my opening remarks. They are currently working on an adjuvant to the standard flu vaccine, which would allow 10 times as many doses from the same stock of vaccine. So it basically allows what would be usually 1 dose to be used for more vaccines. This adjuvant was patented from a University of Wisconsin-Madison research lab in the year 2001, but will likely not make it to clinical trials until the year 2011. And then it is predicted to be another 7 years to get to market, which leaves only 3 years of patent protection. And so I'm wondering, how do companies like this factor into your analysis? Do you think the patent protections are sufficient in an instance like this?
Could I just clarify the first part of your question? I believe you said something was equivalent. Would you just go
Absolutely.
back to that, please?
My understanding is that the FTC report claims that the development time for small molecule and biologic drugs are roughly equivalent.
They are not.
Okay. And maybe you could shine some light on...
there are 2 things that we're talking about. One is if you're looking at a pioneer drug, the first in class, the innovator. If you look at a biologic drug or a chemical drug, they roughly cost the same amount to develop, and this takes the same amount of time. If you then look at the follow-ons or the generics, a generic is much quicker to come to the market than a follow-on. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the pioneers are equivalent. The second the second in the class, so to speak, take a little bit longer for follow-ons. Your question is whether the patent restoration that the example that you gave is basically they're only going to have 3 years left or 4 years left on their patent. They get patent restoration now, so they would be able to add back that time that was lost in FDA approval. That applies to them now. And if that isn't sufficient because of the longer period, so to speak, of testing for or FDA approval, then the fix would be to fix the restoration of the patent, not to then add an additional layer somewhere else, but to fix the underlying problem, which is that the patent isn't providing the length of time that was caught up in the FDA approval process.
Let me also ask you a little bit about the changes in technology that take place over these periods of time. Over the lifetime of a patent for biologics, manufacturing technology will surely improve, making it much easier for companies delivering biosimilars to enter the market. These companies will gain, really, at the innovator's significant expense. And, you know, isn't this an argument for some period of exclusivity to be sure that innovators will still be willing to take the upfront risks to develop these, you know, incredible medicines?
Sure. You know, those technologies that they're going to be developing are actually would be applicable to the pioneer as well. So the pioneer actually can benefit from the increase in technological advancement. For example, if a follow-on develops a better manufacturing process, that manufacturing process can be then imported or be used by the pioneer as well. And so that competition to improve innovation benefits not only the follow-on, but can benefit the pioneer as well.
Okay. Mr. Murphy. I'm sorry, Mr. Boyer.
Thank you very much.
Before you start, let me just mention he'll be the last speaker before we break for the votes, and then we'll come back right after.
I would like to know who asked you to do this report? Who asked you to do this report?
Thank you for that question. Before I answer that, I would just like to say that there is a lot of commonality in this room, although it may not feel.
Well, that's not answering my question.
All right. Well,
answer my question.
I did.
All right. Were you contacted or encouraged by any member of the House and Senate or staff to do this report?
May I answer your question, sir?
Yes.
In 2003, I read the Commission's IP report. I was a new commissioner. I read it, and there was a footnote that talked about generic biologics, they called it then, and how there was a great debate and a lot of controversy about this issue and how it was keeping potentially life-saving drug products from the American consumer. So as a commissioner, I went to my staff and I said, this is an issue that is very important to the American people, and I know that my staff is very expert in these areas. I said, can we take a look at this and see if we can add to the debate? That is how this issue came to the fore.
All right, so you did this on your own?
No, it was with the approval of the other commissioners, but I did see this issue back in 2004.
Do you see yourself as an expert in promoting competition in U.S. markets?
No, I see myself as an expert on the American consumer and trying to be a champion of the American consumer, much as Congress is.
Since you're eager to sit at the table and discuss health, would you be equally as eager to turn to your commissioners and ask that the FTC consider studying the effects of the proposed public health plan options on competition in the health insurance market?
First of all, I was summoned to the table. I'm not eager to sit here, but I'm happy to sit here.
All right, I'm just going to ask you to answer the question that I've asked.
Would you repeat it, please?
Will the FTC consider studying the effects of the proposed public health plan options on the competition in our health insurance market?
If we are directed to study anything by Congress...
Well, you weren't directed to do this study and give it to us. You did this on your own initiative, you just said with pride.
Yes, and we do a lot of things on our own initiative at the Federal Trade Commission.
All right. Would you, on your own initiative, consider the public option plan discussed by the President's an impact on competition in the insurance market?
If we were asked to do so, we
You were asked to do so. All right, I asked you to do so. Would you
we
consider...
would have to vote on that, and it would have to be decided by a majority of the Commission.
All right, so what you're... Oh, wonderful. I'll even put it in writing to you. I'll ask you to do that, and you can consider it for the other commissioners. Would that be okay?
Sir, you may do whatever you'd like, and we will consider
Well, you've just done whatever you like, right? On your own initiative. So let me just do this. If you're willing to... Now you're willing to consider the public plan options in the insurance market's impact on competition in America because you're so concerned about the consumer. Number two, I'm going to ask you for another report. You see, here in the House, we just passed a tobacco bill. The Senate's about to pass a tobacco bill that locks down the tobacco market. And matter of fact, almost eliminates competition because we don't even have harm reduction anymore. And so I'm going to ask for a second report for you to also consider. The impact of tobacco legislation and competition in the marketplace.
Actually,
so I'm going to ask you for two reports, okay? Now, the other question I have is I note in a footnote that you'd sent a letter to Chairman Pallone outlining preliminary views on the likely effects of the regulatory approval pathway. That's great. That wasn't shared with any of us. If this had been done back in May of 2008, this is a hearing, Mr. Chairman, that should have happened some time ago. So I appeal to you that this not be our only hearing that we have.
So I believe that letter is on the public record.
Ma'am, I'm not asking any question of you.
It's on the public record.
Ma'am, I'm not asking any question of you.
If you're asking me the question...
Tell him it's on the public record.
Excuse me, let me just clarify. Is the gentleman yielding to me?
My point is this is my personal opinion. This is a hearing that we should have had later, or at an earlier time, not now. And so my appeal to you is, Mr. Chairman, that we bring the FDA in so we can
FTC.
Look at... Pardon?
Wait a minute. Look, let's please...
Ma'am, I'm not asking you any questions.
Mr. Boyer, look, it's a little unclear who you're asking the question of, and I may not be obvious to you, but it is increasingly to the two of us that we're not sure. The question is to me at this point?
All right. My appeal is that you bring the FDA in so we can get into the efficacy and safety issues. That's my appeal to you.
Okay.
So I'm not asking any questions of this witness.
Okay,
but
let me just, if you would, well, we're out of time anyway, but let me answer the question. First of all, the letter you mentioned, it's my understanding that that letter was posted on the website for the committee and circulated almost a year ago, the one that you mentioned that was sent to me. And I've already, as far as the second question, I've already stated that we are going to have additional hearings, and this is just the first one. So, I mean, I just want to make that clear again.
All right, I have a unanimous consent request.
Unanimous, you have a unanimous consent request?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have a letter from the Association of American Universities, which includes the leading research universities, not only researchers at Indiana and Purdue, but over 60 in the country. And I would ask unanimous consent that the Association of American Universities letter be inserted into the record. Obviously, they're seeking providing 12 years of data exclusivity, and I don't believe it's very clear from the FTC report that they include the nation's leading academic researchers in what their opinions are.
Without objection, so ordered. And the committee is going to now recess until we have the conclusion of these two votes, and then we'll come right back. Thank you.